The American people don't need us to keep arguing over what might be perfect. They need us to actually make a law.
The Senate is set to vote on the skinny stimulus today. What does that mean for you? We'll break it down in just a bit. Meanwhile, the president calls out Joe Biden this time to announce who he'd select to the Supreme Court. Find out who the president would nominate. And finally, today is World Suicide Prevention Day. We'll hear our conversation with Brian Fleming from Project 22 on how to prevent veteran suicide. And hello and welcome to News On. I'm Miranda. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get to the day's top headlines, I want to introduce Dr. Gina Loudon. She's on location at the Faith Summit at Liberty University and joins us live now. Good to see you, Dr. Gina.
Oh, good to see you, Miranda. Great to be with you.
Yeah, together again.
Together again. And we've been here with all the faith leaders from all over the country discussing this upcoming election, the Supreme Court choices that the president threw out yesterday, what Joe Biden's Supreme Court justice choices might be were he to throw them out, and what those might look like to the future of faith in this country, and what that might mean to faith in this country, especially in light of all the things that churches have gone through recently with all the COVID things. And so it's been a very interesting faith summit, and talking to these religious leaders has certainly shed some light on the direction things are going. I think you'll see an increased activity from our churches in this next election based on everything that churches have been through with COVID recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you know, I was just down in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and churches are so important there right now after they went through Hurricane Laura. People need them more than ever. So I think you're right. I've heard you interviewed some big names there while you've been at Liberty University. Care to share with us?
Absolutely. I just finished my interview with Governor Mike Huckabee. As you know, his daughter and my good friend, I served as a surrogate for the president with her, Sarah Huckabee, former press secretary to our president. She just came out with her book. So the governor and I caught up on that and some of the issues that he discussed in his speech here at the Faith Summit. And so without any further discussion, let's just go to my interview with Governor Mike Huckabee. And on set with me right now, the one and only Governor Mike Huckabee, who just took the stage and did a phenomenal job. One of the things you mentioned near and dear to my heart, children with Down syndrome. One of the things that I think has gone largely unsung about this administration is the president's dedication to people with special needs. He did an executive order. A lot of people don't even know about this in an attempt to get children out of foster homes, especially those with special needs. Yeah. And there are a lot of things like that this president has done that speak to the hearts of a lot of Christians in particular, that a lot of people in the American public don't know about, don't hear about. Media doesn't bring it to them. What else don't we know about this president that you know?
Most people don't realize that the authenticity of his pro-life position is incredible. He was not pro-life up until a few years ago, and what happened was he had a dear friend, man and his wife, and they were told by their doctor they needed to abort their child because the child was going to be facing special needs and severe disabilities. They didn't want to do the abortion, and they didn't. And this child has grown up to be just the delight not only of their lives, but the president has seen this child, a wonderful child, and what a delight to the family. And that shook him. It shook him to his core. So when people say, well, he's just pro-life for political reasons, no, that's not true. And no president, none, have ever done as much for the protection of life, not just in the womb, but beyond, and what you just mentioned about special needs children. And think about what he's done with special needs, but also the right to try that he did.
Right.
Which means that if a person is considered terminally ill, they have a right to try medical protocols that may not be fully vetted or approved. but without them, they're going to die.
Right.
They may still die, but they have the right to try. It's consistent with the idea of in America, we have the right to do some things. And this president believes, why should the government restrict us from trying to take care of ourselves? There's many things that he's done, but I just sometimes think people only know him by something he has tweeted or something that he has said, rather than by the things that he's actually done.
He's been a surprise to you.
Not as much as people think. I was supporting him as soon as I got out of the race, and a lot of people surprised that I was supporting him, and they said, well, that didn't seem why. And I said, well, let me tell you something. He's not owned by anybody. The reason Donald Trump is so disliked in Washington is not because he went there and failed to do what he promised. They dislike him because he went there and he did exactly what he promised, and it's messed up the game of D.C., which has always been that the lobbyists and the donors control the game. And it didn't matter whether it was socking it to the gut of factory workers out in Wisconsin. As long as the lobbyists and the donors and the multinational corporations got what they wanted, everybody was happy. Democrats, Republicans, the same. Let's be fair. This wasn't a Democrat thing.
That's right.
The Republicans were equally in the tank for the donor class. Well, Trump comes in. He didn't get there because they threw money at him. He got there on his own. And because he is not obligated to all these special interests, he's been a different kind of president, so he can stand up to China. Most politicians couldn't because they had too many people who were their donors that were dependent upon China being able to sucker punch us in trade deals. This goes on and on, Gina, throughout the whole essence of the Trump administration, where he's able to do and say bold things in government. Same thing in the Middle East. Everybody in the world told him not to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I was with him just after he did it. And I said, Mr. President, I know that every world leader told you not to. I know that, there was enormous pressure not to do it. Why did you do it? And as simple as he could say it, he said this: because I said I would, and it was the right thing to do. Gina, that was so refreshing to hear somebody that didn't do what conventional wisdom told him to do, or that the pressure told him to do, but he said, I said I was going to do it, and it was the right thing to do. I found that refreshing.
Could any of the other candidates for the Republican Party have done what he did? And if not, do we always have to elect a billionaire?
No, it's not that we always have to elect a billionaire, but the question is not could they have done it, but would they have done it? And I'm not sure that anyone would have stood up to the level of pressure that he's been under. No president has ever been under ruthless attack from even before he was sworn in. Investigation after investigation, phony as they were, it still meant that an inordinate amount of his time has been spent having to deal with legal issues, political issues, a press that 100% hates him. I'm not sure many people would have been able to get out of the fetal position out of bed every morning from what he's been through. But he's tough, and it rolls off of him. It's a remarkable thing. So we needed him. I mean, I was one of the people that he defeated. But I look at this and I say, I'm sorry I didn't win, but I'm sure glad he did. And I'm thrilled with the way that he has conducted the policies of his office. Do I cringe sometimes at a tweet or something he might burst out with in an interview? Of course, we all do. But I love him, not because I agree with him 100%, but I do agree with his policies, and I find them refreshing and powerful and bold and good for America and good for my grandchildren.
You mentioned China, you mentioned the Middle East, you mentioned Israel. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Will he get it?
I think there will be a lot of pressure to keep him from getting it, but if anyone has deserved it in my lifetime, I mean, the breakthrough that he made with the UAE and Israel is so historic. I don't think people fully grasp what a big deal that is. The fact that he has pushed hard on NATO to get those member countries to pay their own fair share. I mean, that was pretty brazen to go in there and look Angela Merkel in the face and say, you guys are basically deadbeats. You ought to pony up. You get more out of this than we do. So it's time to pay. And he got it. His efforts to try to bring North Korea to a place where it's not quite as volatile. Standing up to China, this is a president who has faced world leaders and said to them, hey, you know, what you're doing is not good for America. I'm not here to make your life good. I'm here to make the life of my people in America good. And isn't that what we want out of a president? I think it is.
This particular conference here with Falkirk, you know, one of the things that you hear so often in politics, and I even hear this from Christians, and I even hear it from the most conservative Christians, is that politics should be separate from religion. You hear this it's always mind-boggling to me. Are the two inextricably linked? And I know they are in your mind, they are in mine as well.
Sure.
But I want you to explain, why is faith essential to a free nation?
Because in a free nation, we get to choose the government we have. And if we sit it out, if we just say we're not going to participate, we're going to be isolationist, then we get whatever government ends up coming our way. Well, that government may stifle our religious liberty. It may tax fund abortions. It may create 57 genders that I have to accept, not only in the public square, but I have to accept it in the church. And we have to be willing at a church camp to let boys bunk with girls and shower with girls. And I mean, most of us just think that that's absurd. Because we believe in a biblical mandate that says male and female. Those are the genders that God made. So it's not that we're being anti-gender identity, it's that we're being biblical. And we want to be able to continue to be. But if we sit it out and we don't elect people to Congress and to the City Council and to the school boards and to the House and Senate, to the governorships and to the White House, then we're going to get a government that we deserve because we didn't participate, but we sure won't want the government we get.
You think we'll be held accountable for this?
I absolutely do. Why wouldn't God hold us accountable for the stewardship of a free government? So many places, if we lived in the world, we wouldn't have the option of participating, voting, speaking out, disagreeing with the government, and even injecting ourselves as candidates. It's a gift. It's a gift God gave the people of this country because our founders believed that religious freedom and participation of the spiritual community was a very integral part of who we are as a country. If we forgo that, if we walk away from it, then we have abandoned not just our current and even our past, but we've certainly abandoned our future.
Such a loaded question I'm going to ask you right now, and there's no way for you to answer this in its totality, but if you just had to give an encapsulation of an answer to this question, where have our churches gone wrong to let our society get to a place where we took orders from a government during a shutdown to close our churches?
I think it's a part of abandoning the Bible as the sole source of our authority. And we want to be popular. You know, as churches and pastors, I think a lot of people want to be loved and respected and appreciated by the community, but sometimes you have to take a bold stand and say, thus saith the Lord. You know, I would remind people that most of the prophets of the Old Testament were never invited back to speak for their second meeting. Fact is, most of them weren't invited the first time. But they showed up with a word from God, and that's what churches ought to feel their obligation is to speak boldly God's truth based on the Scripture.
And I don't want to let you go without mentioning, I know you're so proud of your family in total, children, grandchildren alike, and your beautiful wife. But your daughter has a new book out, and we're also proud of her. I was honored to get to serve as a surrogate with her for the president in 2016. I just want to give you a chance to talk about that book, because the way you described it to me before we started the interview, I thought made it really one of a kind.
Well, it's a very significant book and very timely. I hope people will read it because it's a wonderful story of her time inside the White House. It's the side of the White House they'll never see anywhere else. They'll never see it in the Washington Post, New York Times, or from some disgruntled person who left because they disagreed with President Trump on his policies. This is from the one person who spent more time at the president's side than any other staff member, more time than anyone other than his own family. But my daughter doesn't say unnamed sources. There were high-level officials. She attributes everything she discusses. She names the names. But she tells the powerful story of this president in a way that has not yet been told. And I think it's a great book. I know the president loves the book because it's finally somebody telling the plus and positive side of his administration. And I'm very proud of her for having written it. And I will say this, not just because she's my daughter, it's a great read. It's a compelling read. And she also addresses things. What is it like to be the first mom who ever held the job of press secretary? Did the president support her as a working mother? And how does he really feel and interact with the women of his administration? Those are things that they've never been told, and she tells them very beautifully and powerfully.
She is a beautiful and powerful friend and just a passionate patriot, and not far off the coattails of Dad and Mom there. So thank you so much for being with us today, Governor Huckabee. God bless you. And back to you.
Back to us, I guess. What a wonderful interview. So glad you were able to share that with us, Dr. Gina.
Oh, thank you, Miranda. Thanks for letting us show it on your show. It was literally just right before I came on with you, and we weren't sure when we were going to air it, but we decided, I guess, to bring it to your show. You know, Governor Huckabee is just a heart of gold, super special person. Yeah. And one of my favorite things about him is his true love for Israel. We share that love, and I think we're going to actually be doing a trip together coming up this February. And but what wonderful. A special family, what a special father, and what a special patriot. Really an honor to get to interview him. You know, he had interviewed me for my second book, and so this was really fun to get to kind of turn the tables again and get to interview him about Sarah's book and other things. So it was great.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Again, Dr. Gina Loudon there at Liberty University. Looking forward to more interviews from you, talking to the various people that are there attending that event. Thank you so much for joining us. There is still much more to come here on News On. We're going to take a look at some of the stories that are making headlines, including could we actually see a stimulus bill being passed this week? We're going to talk about the likelihood of that finally happening because talks have been stalled for quite a while. That's still to come. You're watching News On. We'll be right back. And welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda Khan. A procedural motion to advance a Republican-led COVID stimulus bill. It's expected to be voted in the Senate today. But this measure may not get very far, as Democratic leaders have already been voicing strong opposition to it. Last month, talks, as you may recall, broke down when trying to create the new bill. And, well, not much has changed since then. Just take a listen to what Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had to say about it.
The Democratic leaders have spent months playing these Goldilocks games. They've complained about every single thing we've put forward, but they've produced nothing of their own with any chance whatsoever of becoming law.
The so-called skinny bill from Senate Republicans calls for $300 a week in enhanced jobless benefits, extends the Paycheck Protection Program, and provides $105 billion in education funds.
Now, here's what our bill is not. It's not a sweeping, multi-trillion-dollar plan to rebuild the entire country in Republicans' image. It does not even contain every single relief policy that Republicans ourselves think would help in the short term. I'm confident the Democrats would feel the same way. But the American people don't need us to keep arguing over what might be perfect. They need us to actually make a law.
The near $500 billion bill does not include stimulus checks or additional state aid. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer have been calling for a $2.2 trillion stimulus plan, but that was rejected by Republicans.
We're not budging. Understand this.
Then how do you break the impasse?
They have to move. They have to move. Why should there be a bill that has far less what the public needs? We have that responsibility, and and they're just going to have to come up with more money.
The GOP measure needs 60 votes to move past a Democratic filibuster, but it's not expected to get that many.
Senator McConnell says he's prepared a so-called skinny COVID bill to put before the Senate. But he put it before us on a take it or leave it. No amendments, no debate. Well, this proposal isn't skinny, it's anemic. Why are they afraid to vote? Let's have amendments. Vote them up or down. Is there any question why the American public wonders what's going on when the Republican leadership will not even allow a vote? What are they so afraid of? It's democracy. Vote up or down.
Democrats say they've already dropped their $3 trillion proposal down to $2 trillion and want Republicans to meet them halfway, moving their $1 trillion proposal closer towards that $2 trillion mark. The number of workers filing for first-time unemployment benefits did not change between last week and the week prior. The Labor Department's new report shows another 884,000 Americans filed for initial jobless assistance last week. That's the seasonally adjusted basis. Without it, the weekly number of initial claims was slightly lower, but had still increased from the prior week. And another 838,000 workers who don't qualify for traditional unemployment filed for benefits under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. Meanwhile, 13.4 million American workers filed for claims for unemployment insurance for at least 2 weeks in a row. That's up slightly from the previous week, and it's not a great sign for the jobs recovery. The Labor Department said in the week ending August 22nd, nearly 30 million Americans were claiming some form of government benefits. Meanwhile, President Trump announces an updated list of Supreme Court nominees just ahead of the 2020 election, adding nearly 24 more possible justices to his list from the year 2016.
My fellow Americans, apart from matters of war and peace, the nomination of a Supreme Court justice is the most important decision an American president can make. For this reason, candidates for president owe the American people a specific list of individuals they consider for the United States Supreme Court.
Trump named jurists such as Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Bridget Bade, Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, former U.S. Solicitor General Paul Clement, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Allison Rushing, and numerous others. In addition to Cruz, Trump also named two other sitting Republican senators, Tom Cotton of Arkansas being one of them, and Josh Hawley of Missouri, as potential Supreme Court nominees. The president also called on Joe Biden to release his list.
Joe Biden has refused to release his list, perhaps because he knows the names are so extremely far left that they could never withstand public scrutiny or receive acceptance. He must release a list of justices for people to properly make a decision as to how they will vote. It is very important that he do so.
And in response to allegations made in Bob Woodward's new book, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Dr. Anthony Fauci said that he does not believe the president, quote, distorted things that I spoke to him about, he says. Fauci made that comment yesterday. Again, this is in reference to Woodward's forthcoming book about President Trump. Reporting about that book entitled Rage, the Washington Post wrote, Fauci, at one point, tells others that the president is on a separate channel and unfocused in meetings with rudderless leadership. Again, this is all according to Woodward. Woodward continues to say that Fauci said the president's, quote, attention span is like a minus number and his sole purpose is to get reelected. Dr. Fauci responded yesterday by making an appearance on Fox News.
You know, if you notice, it was others have said that. Yeah. So, you know, you should ask others. I don't recall that at all. So, I mean, in the book, I didn't read the book, but according to what I saw in the newspapers, it says, and others have said that. So, you know, I mean, I don't really want to get involved in the kind of stuff that is very distracting to the kind of things that I'm trying to do and that we're all trying to do with this outbreak.
And speaking of the coronavirus itself, it continues to impact our country. As you know, according to Johns Hopkins, the number of COVID-19 deaths here in the U.S. has now surpassed 190,000. And there have been more than 6 million coronavirus cases in the U.S. But COVID-19 isn't the only potential health threat that Americans face. According to a new report from the CDC, more people are buying e-cigarettes than ever before. I mean, a lot more. In fact, a new report says e-cigarette sales jumped, you ready for this, nearly 300% between November of 2016 and August of 2019. The CDC researchers also found a significant increase in the sale of disposable e-cigarettes right after that same time period. Health advocates say since President Trump's flavor ban in February, more young people have moved to exempted products like disposable vapes. The Food and Drug Administration now warns companies that sell disposable e-cigarettes and e-liquids. The agency issued letters to 3 companies just yesterday, in fact, which is the deadline for companies to apply for pre-market authorization. Today marks a very serious day of awareness. September 10th, if you didn't know, is World Suicide Prevention Day. The International Association for Suicide Prevention organizes this observance along with the World Health Organization. At last review in 2017, suicide was the 10th leading cause of death here in the U.S. But this is a global phenomenon. Experts say some ways to prevent suicide include reducing access to firearms and medications, early care for the mentally ill, school-based interventions, and training health workers to assess and help manage suicidal behavior. Those can also be very helpful. A tradition part of this annual observance is to light a candle near a window at 8 o'clock. And we're going to talk more about this day coming up a little bit later on in the show, specifically how one organization is helping our veterans who are at particular risk of suicide. That's all coming up. Meanwhile, New York City is preparing to pay tribute to the lives that were lost on 9/11. This Friday, a ceremony at Ground Zero will take place to mark the 19th anniversary of the terror attacks. Hard to believe it's been 19 years. Officials note that there will be some additional safety measures because of the pandemic. The biggest change, of course, is that this year there will be no live readings of the victims' names. Instead, organizers will play recordings of family members reading them. Those in attendance are also expected to adhere to state and federal guidelines regarding social distancing. The ceremony will honor the 2,983 men, women, and children killed in those attacks at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and aboard Flight 93 on September 11th, 2001. Still ahead here on this edition of News On, Dr. Tom Borelli is going to join us live on the show. We're going to talk about everything from the president's picks for the Supreme Court to whether or not we'll actually see a stimulus bill get passed in the near future, and many more topics coming up. We'll get to that coming up. You're watching News On. Stick around. Welcome back to News On. For what seems like months, it does seem like months, right? Republicans and Democrats have been deadlocked over how to get a new stimulus COVID relief bill passed to provide some relief to millions of us here in America. Up for vote today will be Senate Republicans' latest attempt to get a bill passed. We told you about it, the specifics, a little bit earlier on the show. This is supposed to be this new skinny bill to help us digest what this bill would actually look like and whether or not it will actually pass. Joining us now is America's Voice News contributor, Dr. Tom Borelli. Good to have you on the program, as always.
Great to be back with you again, Miranda.
So obviously, these people, they've been deadlocked forever. Republicans and Democrats, both accusing the other of not wanting to reach some kind of common ground. As we mentioned earlier, originally Republicans wanted this to be a $1 trillion bill, and Democrats wanted it to be over $2 trillion. You have, who's at fault here for not reaching some common ground? Are both parties responsible for not coming together and helping Americans out?
I'd like to take a step back and always look at the big context of where we are. And we know the presidential election and the other elections actually in Congress are only about 2 months away. So what we're seeing now is massive politicking. And I think at the end of the day, what the Democrats really want, I think they really, looking towards the election, I think they really want chaos. They really don't want to see the American families, small businesses really helped out with federal resources, because I think they believe that if the people are uncomfortable, if they don't feel happy with where they are in their personal lives, they will then vote for change, which means voting for a Democrat like former Vice President Joe Biden. And there's no doubt the first time around, Democrats are really playing politics with the first relief bill. I think it was the CARES Act. Let's not forget that Speaker Pelosi crammed in non-items related to the COVID crisis into that legislation.
I hear you, but they got it passed. So it does seem, when you look at it, playing devil's advocate here, when you have Democrats that want a $3 trillion package and you have Republicans who want a $1 trillion package, why not meet in the middle and say, let's do a $2 trillion package?
I think you just have to, again, wind down, what do the American people need, right? The American people who are in small businesses, they need relief. Schools need relief. We need some little bit more money for testing. That's what's, and an additional unemployment benefits. I think this skinny bill, $500 billion, so it's not that skinny, is for another 300. So that's directly targeted to the American people. I think that is good. Democrats, what are they pushing for? Speaker Pelosi wants to start to bail out the blue states that have failed miserably with their economies and high tax rates. That's one of the issues she wants. She wants mandatory national mail-in voting. Miranda, that has absolutely nothing to do with the hardships of the American people, but everything to do with Democrat politics. Pelosi thinks she can hold really a shotgun to President Trump's head and say, take it or leave it. But at the end of the day, again, I think the American people are wise to this. They see these political games. They see the clear difference between what the Republicans are asking for and what Pelosi's agenda is. Remember, she got money in for the Kennedy Center the last time. Absolutely nothing to do with the American people.
So let me ask you this. What are the chances? I mean, you've already heard, Nancy Pelosi criticizing this bill, that she's not going to let it pass. So, I mean, are Republicans in the Senate just wasting their time with this vote?
Well, you always have to, play the game, play the cards you have. And I think they're really doing the right thing with this, so-called skinny bill, because it is targeted to help out the American small businesses and families and schools. I think that's what they should be doing. So you have to, play that game, so to speak, because you have to at least put forth a good effort and then give the American people a choice. Republicans wanted this, Democrats wanted this. Who's looking out for you? And then go vote in November. Well,
we're definitely going to keep a close watch on that. But I do want to get your reaction. The president tweeting about another issue that's been making headlines. And, of course, that Bob Woodward's book that's coming out, Rage. The president there slamming Woodward, tweeting out, Bob Woodward had my quotes for many months. If he thought they were so bad or dangerous, why didn't he immediately report them in an effort to save lives? He continued saying, didn't he have an obligation to do so? No, because he knew they were good and proper answers. Woodward responded to that, defending his decision to withhold the president's remarks. Again, these happened in February and March. The president's been being criticized for downplaying the pandemic. He said that, he was doing it for to create calm, if you will. But Woodward said to the Associated Press he needed time to ensure that the president's comments were accurate. In your opinion, how damaging is this latest report? Because in just the past few weeks, we've seen a book, coming out criticizing the president for comments that he made in 2018, I believe. Another report coming out saying that the president called soldiers losers at a cemetery in France. So the timing of this can seem kind of suspicious here because it is right before an election. But just want to get your reaction. How damaging is this to the president?
I don't think it's really going to be damaging to President Trump if people are really paying attention to the timeline of what happened and when. But to your point, my view of this world is nothing ever happens by accident in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Mr. Woodward had these quotes on an audio tape, so why did he take months to verify it? And also think about this. Isn't it ironic that the day President Trump is nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, all of a sudden the excerpts from this book get released and totally hijacks the news cycle? It's an example of the left-wing media driving their agenda against President Trump. I mean, that is just so clear. And the biggest thing President Trump did, it was all his actions with respect to the Wuhan virus. On January 31st, he issued that travel ban from China, of which Joe Biden criticized. Joe Biden is out there yesterday saying President Trump, if he would have acted earlier, he would have saved X number of lives. Well, you know what? That's a complete lie, because Biden didn't want to stop the travel from China, and they reversed that decision in the beginning of April. That's 2 whole months of thousands of Chinese, many of them infected, into the United States. So Biden, again, is playing loose with the facts. He's desperate to really exploit the tragedy of this coronavirus for his own political advantage.
Dr. Tom Borelli, always a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And there's still much more to come here on News On. We're going to be talking again about it being World Suicide Prevention Day, easy for me to say, and what one organization is doing to help veterans, because they're especially at risk when it comes to suicide. We're going to talk about that coming up right after the break. Back to News On. As we mentioned earlier, today marks World Suicide Prevention Day. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 800,000 people die every year to suicide. That's one person every 40 seconds. That's a lot. COVID-19 has exacerbated this issue even more, with reports suggesting as many as 25% of Americans have thought about taking their own lives or have suffered severe depression and anxiety due to this particular pandemic. One group in particular at risk of suicide is, of course, our veterans and active military service members. Recently, my co-host of Real Convo, Alan Mednick, a show that you will soon see here on America's Voice News, we sat down with an organization looking to change that with some just amazing results. Take a look. And welcome to Real Convo. Joining us now is Purple Heart recipient and combat wounded veteran Brian Fleming. Also joining us once again, Dr. Allison Bested. Thank you so much. So we were going over the brain scans a little bit, and I want to go into your personal story, Brian, but let's go back to those images that we were talking about and kind of explaining how this works, those brain scans. So you were talking about gray matter is actually the healthy brain.
That's correct. So if you look at the brain scans again, the one on the top is the pre-hyperbaric chamber treatment, and you can see there's a large amount of decreased blood flow to the brain compared to after the treatment. On the bottom, you can see there's much more gray, which represents normal perfusion, and the the brown and the black has turned to green, which represents very mild reduction. So that's a great improvement after hyperbaric treatment.
And how many days is that about? Do you know?
So the usual treatment is 30 days. Basically, there are 40 treatments altogether. There's one in the morning and one in the afternoon until a total of 40 treatments is finished.
Wow. And Brian, you're going through that right now.
Yes.
It's amazing. I got to tell you. So
he just loves that word, amazing.
I know, but look at this face.
I know.
This
He's
face
smiling.
is beautiful, and
tell that to my wife.
I know. But he had burns all over his face.
Yeah, full face and neck were second degree.
So tell us your personal story.
I started with the U.S. Army's 10th Mountain Division as a team leader in an infantry platoon back in 2006. While I was there, I was in 2 vehicles that were blown up. First one ran over a bomb in the road. I actually walked away completely physically unharmed from that, but I started having headaches every day. I was forgetting things that I knew I should know. It was creating a little bit of strife between me and my immediate supervisor, and I didn't know why. And then a couple months later, July 24th of 2006, a suicide bomber pulled his minivan, got right up next to my door on Highway 1 in Kandahar, and he blew the whole thing into about 10,000 pieces. And it was literally from me to you, or me to you really, because he was on this side, right there on the road next to each other, and woke up in a ditch on the side of the road, had no idea what happened, and he was the only guy to die that day, which is why my Purple Heart license plate on my truck says "Nice try," because that's my sort of to him. So
I love that.
After 14 months at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, burn treatment, reconstructive surgery, scraped my skin off with the razor blades. I had a very unique person come into my life that helped help me into my next mission in life.
Now you're incredible, because I did read somewhere that you do motivational speaking now, and you actually went on stage with your bandages on.
Yeah, I didn't know I was going to be on stage. That's where that.
You didn't know that?
The guy I met, my first mentor, a guy named Dave Reaver, he was injured horribly in Vietnam by a phosphorus grenade.
Yeah.
He came home, he started speaking, writing books. Well, he came and spoke to me and about 30 other guys who had been blown up and shot up. And we hit it off, and he said, "Hey, I'll show you how to do something with this, if you'd like." Well, I get a call like a month later, and his secretary says, "Hey, he's going to be at this place in this small town, middle of nowhere, Kansas. He wants you to come."
Hey, now I'm from Kansas. Watch it.
There you go. Manhattan,
Watch
Kansas.
it there.
Yeah. We weren't in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
And so he brings me there, and he's talking. I didn't realize how many people had filled in behind me. I'm on the front row. I'm still in burn bandages. My face is pretty pink.
You can't even tell.
Yeah, on my hands.
And that's what the amazing thing is. Look, you could repair, obviously, and I don't know what you looked like before. Hopefully you're
not much better.
Okay.
But, you're really handsome.
But look,
he's already taken.
I know. But look, I mean, obviously you could fix physical. Mental is something else.
Yeah, so I want to know how going along those lines, I want to know how you got in touch with the Project 22. Like, how did that happen for you?
It was through a friend, I think it was through my friend Debbie Lee, whose son Mark Lee was a SEAL who was killed in Iraq. And she had hooked me up, I think, with 22 Project and this whole hyperbaric thing. And so that's, it's interesting. This is my second run through hyperbaric treatment. And the first time I noticed, when I was done with it, I started noticing I'm falling asleep earlier. I'm normally like a 1 or 2 a.m. guy because my mind is just racing. I'm turned on at night. My headaches went away by about 75%.
Really?
75%?
Yeah, about. I was having severe
From
headaches. 1 to 3 times a day I would have severe headaches. And it went down to like 1 every few days. And it fluctuates still sometimes, but it is massively better. And I just can't wrap my head around why in the world the VA and the military never offered me this treatment 13 years ago.
Yeah.
My quality of life for the past 13 years would have been revolutionized and different for the better.
So Dr. Bested,
what is it about the hyperbaric chamber that, like with the headaches? What is it that helps, reduce the headaches?
Well, we suspect because you get better blood flow to the brain, that when the brain has a headache, one of the causes can be reduced oxygen to the brain. So when you give the brain more oxygen, the headaches disappear.
Wow.
That's amazing.
And what it's basically doing is revitalizing the cells in the brain?
Absolutely.
Regenerating itself?
Yeah, so the stem cells in the brain produce more stem cells, which are the neurons. So you're getting a whole new replacement for the neurons in the brain. So you have better functionality, which leads to better sleep, less pain, all of these symptoms that are anxiety, depression, all these things tend to basically be improved.
So Brian, how long after did you start realizing that you had TBI or PTSD or both? Both. Okay.
Yeah.
How long after did you realize?
It wasn't like I woke up one day and I felt a difference. It was sort of like one day I just sort of noticed that things were a little different or better than they used to be. I can't really pinpoint a time or how long it took. I would imagine it's different for everybody, but it didn't take very long. And
so
it was
how
probably
many sessions have you done?
I did 40 originally, and now this week I've done probably 12 at this point. We still have some more to go.
Okay. And what's the difference? Why would you need to come back for a second one?
I got the opportunity.
Okay.
and I realized how much it helped me the first time. If I can maybe double those results, that would dramatically improve my quality of life.
It's incredible. And what else are you doing? You're going around and doing motivational speaking too.
Yeah, I realized that after I was injured, that day that my first mentor pulled me up on stage in front of 3,000 people and I didn't know it and I was still in burn bandages, I met a young lady after that who had been raped and molested and abused as a kid. Her boyfriend had broken up with her. She tried to kill herself and failed. But she approached me after this event, after I spoke for 2 minutes. And she said, but if you can get through all that, she said, I think I can get through this. And that was a turning point. It was a 1-degree shift. It gave meaning to my suffering. And I discovered my new mission in life. And that's one of the big challenges veterans face, is that they get out of the military, it's sort of an institution, it is. And so you're sort of institutionalized, you're part of something, and you get out, and a lot of men and women, they don't have their next mission. And I didn't either, but I found it through that. And so I found meaning in my suffering. That was the number one foundational thing that turned me in a good direction.
Doctor, I want to go back to you too, though, because your background again was, in dealing with blood, then you've kind of gotten on board with this. Why did you want to get involved with the 22 Project? Because you heard what Ryan was saying, you don't understand why the VA wasn't on board with this. You're hearing him say this. You want to be a part of it. What inspired you to do that?
Yes, well, I'm on staff at the Institute for Neuroimmune Medicine at Nova Southeastern University, and part of the mission there is to help the patients with Gulf War illness. And these are veterans that are specifically sick as a result of a Desert Storm, which was in 1990. So we have part of our clinic is devoted to helping these veterans. So my boss, Dr. Nancy Klimas, she invited me to this meeting to see about this hyperbaric, because Alex Cruz approached her and said, could we do some research on hyperbaric? And that's how I got involved. So it's absolutely thrilling. I've seen now 20 of the SPECT scans and before and after treatment, and also the multiple symptom questionnaires, which we have a graph that shows a distinct improvement from before to after the treatments. The numbers go from a high of 75, which is a total disability, down to half after the 40 treatments, 35.
So when you hear someone like Brian say, I noticed right away, how does that make you feel as a doctor?
Well, it gives me hope to try to basically bring this information and to do some clinical research trials, which we will be involved with shortly, to try to show that this actually does work in a clinical trial, so that eventually we'll be able to apply for Department of Defense grants to do a huge trial, so that we can actually show the mechanisms, how this works, particularly in Gulf War illness, but also in post-traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. You had mentioned about the VA, trying to go to VA. What other type of treatments have you gone for before this?
Well, basically the treatments. I mean, the VA offers you pills, and more pills. Talk to somebody. I just wasn't real big on that. I watched so many of my friends get into this circle, this downward cycle of pills they couldn't get out of. And if you just stop, you could die if you just cold turkey stop.
Yeah.
And I decided from day one, I'm not going to make myself worse. I'll fight it head on or die trying it. That was my own personal choice. I don't advise other people on what to do. I'm not qualified to do that. But for me, it's like I'd rather be myself and deal with these things, because at least it's really me dealing with it.
Yeah, you were married when you went into the military? Or?
I got married 3 months before I left and deployed to Afghanistan.
Okay, and was there a difference with your family that they saw it, your wife saw it?
Oh yeah,
what was going on?
She got a completely different man coming home. And I've apologized to her that over the years. I'm sorry you married someone else and then you ended up with me. But we'll be celebrating 15 years of marriage pretty soon, and we're making it work. I can tell you, I got a good woman from Texas. You're from Texas. Y'all make your women good down
I got my boots on. I should have put my cowboy hat. I got my boots on.
I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
I'm a good apologizer. I think that has a big thing to do with it. That's my only credit.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm dead serious.
No, I think it's awesome. I'm sure she's noticing improvement in you as well.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just so inspired.
You're an amazing guy. Amazing.
By your story. Brian, thank you so much for joining us here on Real Convo. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. Please come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're going to get some more treatments done, right?
Yep. And I just want to remind everybody, we all get blown up in life. We all have catastrophes happen, but every catastrophe actually produces opportunities. But most people get so hung up in their catastrophe, they miss the opportunities right in front of them. And so keep your eyes open.
We definitely will. And keep your eyes open for more segments like the one you just saw. Again, the name of the show is Real Convo, and it's going to be coming your way here on America's Voice News. Finally, we leave you this afternoon to talk about the NFL because it's kicking off its season officially tonight, and more than 33 million Americans are expected to make wagers, though there is less enthusiasm from NFL fans, obviously. But according to the American Gaming Association, 6 million Americans will wager at physical, legal sports books. That's an increase of 18% over last year. Huge. With everything else during the pandemic, more wagering activity will occur online. Betting through legal and illegal online platforms, is expected to increase by 29%, though many NFL teams will not have fans in the stands. All I have to say is go Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, I am biased because I'm from Kansas. Enjoy your football. Thank you so much for watching this edition of News On. We'll see you back here tomorrow at noon. Stay tuned. America's Voice Live is next.